Okay, so in this lecture, we are going to talk about generative AI. So in case you are someone who is not familiar with this term, then this video is going to be very important for you because we are going to cover the basics of generative AI and it will help you a lot to gain the foundational understanding around this topic. So let's quickly discuss today's agenda to understand that what are we going to cover today. We will talk about generative AI, of course. We will try to understand the basics of it, and we will also try to understand that how it actually fits within the whole umbrella of artificial intelligence. Followed by that, we will discuss different types of deep learning models. So basically, we will try to understand the difference between discriminative and generative models. Followed by that, we will try to gain some understanding around generative language models and generative image models, and then we will also try to gain a basic understanding around the training of these two, how the training happens for these two types of models, and finally towards the end we will try to gain some understanding around prompt design. So as you can see, we are going to cover a lot of interesting topic within this particular video. So I request you that you stick to the end of this lecture, and I promise you that you will learn a lot of interesting stuff by the end of this video. So let's try to understand the structure of AI before covering the topic of generative AI. So talking about AI or artificial intelligence, it is a discipline or branch of computer science that deals with the creation of intelligent models. Models that will have the ability to learn and work autonomously, or it should be able to perform tasks that normally requires human intelligence or human intervention. So if we talk about self-driving cars, okay, where it can work without any type of human intervention, that could be a very good example of artificial intelligence system. And within the umbrella of artificial intelligence, we have the concept of machine learning. So basically, it is a concept where you will code the algorithm, and the algorithm will have the ability to learn itself from the data. And going by that learning, it will have the ability to classify or predict in a given use case. And within the concept of machine learning, we have the topic of deep learning. It is based on the idea of mimicking the human brain, or I should say mimicking the structure of human brain. So if you have been following my deep learning playlist, over there we have discussed a lot about it, that how the deep learning neural network structure is formed and how similar it looks compared to the human brain or the structure of a human brain. And if we talk about the concept of generative AI, that fits somewhere over here by intersecting machine learning and deep learning both. So this is where the concept of generative AI actually falls. And if you have ever heard about the term of LLM or large language model, that also is placed somewhere over here by intersecting the concept of machine learning and deep learning both. And by the way, the very next lecture within this series or playlist of generative AI, we will be discussing a lot on LLM models. In case you have never heard about it or you are not at all familiar with LLMs, then I can give you the famous examples of ChatGPT or Google Bard model, which are very popular nowadays. So the models like ChatGPT are actually the LLM models. These type of models are trained on vast amount of text data, and they are trained in such a way that they have the capability of generating text. So obviously you will be able to understand this if you have ever used ChatGPT. Anyways, let's shift our focus back to generative AI. So generative AI is a subset of deep learning. So it uses artificial neural network architecture, and it can process labeled or unlabeled data using supervised or unsupervised or maybe semi-supervised methods. Just stick to the video and we are going to discuss more on this. And before we discuss ahead around generative AI, I want to cover this particular thing where we will try to understand different types of deep learning models. Let's first discuss about discriminative models. So these are the models which are mainly used to classify or predict the very usual models that we learn initially when we are learning the concepts like deep learning or machine learning. And these models are mostly trained on labeled data. And as you know that these models learns the relationship between feature and target column. So obviously if you are familiar with the basics of deep learning and machine learning, then you will be anyways familiar with the idea of discriminative models. Now let's quickly also discuss about generative models now. So these are the models that generates new data similar to the data used for training. For example, ChatGPT. It is able to generate text, and if we talk about the training part of it, it is trained on text data only. Then if we talk about image generation models like DALL-E 2, this will have the ability to generate images and it has been trained on image data. So basically generative models will be able to generate data, similar type of data which was used for training. These type of models will have the capability to predict the next word in a given sequence. For example, if you are writing an email on your Gmail application, then you must have noticed that how it predicts or suggests you the upcoming words. If you are typing that please find the CV, then by itself it will suggest you attached to the email. So that model is also a very good example of generative deep learning model. Also, these models learns the pattern in unstructured content to generate similar type of new content. So I hope that now you have some understanding around what is a discriminative model and how they are used for classification or prediction in a given use case, and what is the concept of a generative model. And based on the idea of generative models, we have the concept of generative AI. So basically a generative AI model that can be supervised, semi-supervised, or even unsupervised as well. These models will be able to take training code, labeled data or unlabeled data in order to build a foundational model. A model that will have the ability to generate new content like text, code, image or audio, etc. Nowadays, if you are following the AI trend on social media or internet, then you may have come across a lot of AI tools that will have the ability to generate text. It will be able to answer your question. It will be able to generate code for you. You just give it the error that you are getting while writing the code, and it will be able to debug that issue for you by providing you the correct code. These models will have the ability to generate images for you, very ultra realistic images, just by taking a prompt. In fact, music or audios can be created by using these models. Although it is going to be a very vast study that how these models will have the ability to generate this kind of content. So obviously within this lecture we cannot cover that all, but for the time being I just hope that you have a clarity around what is a generative AI model. As a simple understanding, it is a deep learning based model that will have the ability to generate data. It could be text data, it could be image, it could be audio, anything. And with that being said, let's take a closer look into the concept of generative language models and generative image models. So let's discuss first about generative language models. These are the models that learns about patterns in language through training data, and then given some text, they will be able to predict that what comes next. On the other hand, if we talk about generative image models, they produce images using techniques like diffusion. So in case you are not familiar with the technique of diffusion, then basically when you are giving a prompt to the model, then it will transform random noise or scattered data into images. Or in simple words, it will have the capability of generating images only from the given prompt. So if you are giving a prompt like a cat sitting on the table and playing a guitar, then the model will be able to create an image like that for you. Of course, the famous examples would be DALL-E 2 or Stable Diffusion. So we have some basic understanding around the functionality of a generative language model or a generative image model. Now let's take a very high level overview about the training process behind these models. So let me quickly erase all this first. And let's take the example of generative language model because that will be easier to understand. And let's discuss that how it works. If we discuss about the pre-training part, then obviously the first thing is going to be a large amount of data. Secondly, this model will have billions and billions of parameters to train. When we say parameters, I mean the weights, and training of parameters means reaching to the suitable values for all these weights that will give you the minimum loss, or in simple words, the prediction will be more precise. And since these models are generating the words on the fly, which means going by the question or prompt that you are passing on to these models, the response is going to be absolutely random. So that is not supervised. So there is going to be a concept of unsupervised learning. Now let's say that you are asking the model a simple question. Let's say you are asking that how are you, and you pass it as an input to the model. Then first of all, this will be passed to a transformer. In case you are not familiar with the concept of transformer, let me explain you in a simple words that this architecture will have two components. First will be encoding and second will be decoding. In other words, it takes the text data from you and it converts the data in a computer understandable format. Then the transformed data, which can be understood by the computer, will be then sent to the generative pre-trained transformer model. And basically this is the model which has been trained on this large amount of data, and this will have the capability of generating new data similar to the data which was used for training. So this will have the capability of giving you an output like I am good, thanks. Okay. This gives the model the ability to respond like this. Again, this was an entirely high-level overview. We did not discuss any complex or any technicality behind the training. So feel free to explore more about the concepts like transformer if you are already not familiar with this term. Try to read more about encoding or decoding component, and that will be able to give you a deeper understanding around it. And lastly, let's discuss about prompt design. So basically, prompt design is a method where the quality of the input determines the quality of the output. These are some prompt examples below. For example, you can ask a model to write an article on a given topic, or you can ask it to summarize the content of a given article. In fact, you can also ask the model to write a code in a given language to perform a certain task. And basically these things are going to be your input. These inputs will be fed on to the large language models, and then they can give you the output depending on the prompt. So it can either write for you, it can summarize the content of a given article, or it can also generate the code for you. Different types of models will perform different types of tasks. So there are models like text to text, which means you give text as a prompt and the output as well will be in form of a text. Also there are text to image models as well, where the prompt will be in form of text, but the output that you will get will be an image. And similarly, there could be text to video as well. Not only that, it could be text to audio or text to code as well. There are lots of different types of generative models available on internet in today's date, and going by your need or your purpose, you can choose any one of them. So if you're someone who is preparing for a career in analytics, it has now become a necessity to learn about these things, because as I have discussed previously on this channel, when I was sharing my experience around giving multiple interviews, I was actually asked about the concept of generative AI. So as of now, it is not that absolute mandate to have a very strong grip on generative AI if you are preparing to become a data analyst or data scientist. But I'm pretty much sure that near in the future, maybe after a year or a couple of years, if you are applying for a data analyst or data scientist job, it will become absolute important to have a very good understanding on different types of generative AI models to make your work more convenient. So that was it. I tried to discuss some basic things within this particular lecture. In the next lecture, I am planning to keep a dedicated video on large language models, where we will go deeper into the concept of LLM. We will discuss about the development of a large language model and its difference with compared to traditional machine learning development. And in that lecture, we will also discuss about the difference between prompt design and prompt engineering. So I'm trying to cover different topics within the field of generative AI on this channel. Going ahead, more tutorials are scheduled on the way. So please consider dropping a like below to support my work, and consider subscribing to the channel if you are new here. Thank you very much for watching till the end. You have a nice day ahead.